Ionian period passed from generation to generation to the succeeding generations, not only by means of what is called verbal transmission, but still also by means of marks on durable materials, that is, as it would be expressed there, by means of inscriptions, consisting of conventional signs which then stood for definite being articulate sounds, or letters. Then, when at the beginning of the contemporary civilization, certain beings there began to decipher them from a bit here and a bit there, and realized that they could not sound or pronounce many of these definite letters, they then invented what is called a written compromise. This mentioned written compromise was that instead of the signs or letters which they could not pronounce, although they understood the sense of this pronunciation, they decided to employ a slightly similar letter of their alphabet at the time. And in order that everybody should understand that it was not that letter but quite another, they always wrote by its side a letter of the ancient Romans, now existing but already meaningless, called in English H, and among the contemporary French, H. From then on, all the other of your favorites began doing the same. They added to each of these suspicious letters this Roman inheritance. When this written compromise was invented, they had about 25 of these suspicious letters. But in the course of time, as their ableness to pronounce deteriorated with the increase of their wiseacring, the number of the letters they specially invented for such a being ableness diminished. And by the time the word artist was invented, they had already only 8 of these letters. And in front of this notorious H, they wrote letters, partly ancient Greek and partly ancient Latin, which they indicated in the following way: TH, PH, GH, CH, SCH, KH, DH, and OH. The basis they had for the arising of such a misunderstanding there was the compromising sign PH. And it was the basis because it appeared in the word by which the learned mysterists were designated, and also in the word which stood for a personality invented by the ancient Greeks, with whose name, as I've already said, one of the schools of art then existing had been connected. And the result of this was that the mentioned representatives of this terrestrial art of that time, with their already now quite bobtailed reason, thought that it was nothing more than the word indicating the followers of the historical personality Orpheus. And as many of them did not regard themselves as his followers, then instead of the mentioned word, they just invented the word artist. As we have seen, not every inheritance of the ancient Romans turned out to be maleficent for the beings of subsequent generations. But in the given case, this little letter H of theirs has been even an inspiring factor for engendering that being ableness in the presences of such beings of subsequent generations to whom it became already definitely proper to have no initiative or ableness of their own. And they wished and succeeded in substituting for the already long existing definite expression Orpheist the new word artist. Here it is important to inform you concerning a great strangeness there in respect of the mentioned gradual atrophy of the presences of the three-brained beings of this planet of such a being ableness as the capacity to reproduce the consonants required for verbal intercourse. The point is that the tempo of the deterioration of this being capacity does not proceed in the common presences of beings in the psychic and organic functioning of their planetary bodies in everyone in every generation uniformly, but it alternates, as it were, at different times and on different parts of the surface of this planet, affecting at one time more the psychic and at another time the organic part of the functioning of the planetary body. A very good elucidating example of what I've just said is afforded by the sensations of the taste and the capacity to pronounce those two definite consonants, or those letters known there at the present time, and used among almost all the contemporary beings who breed on all parts of the surface of your planet, and which passed to them through the ancient Greeks from times long past. The said two letters were called by the ancient Greeks Theta and Delta. Here it is interesting to notice that your favorites of very ancient times specially used just these two letters for giving distinct names to two quite opposite meanings.
Namely, they used the letter theta
in words which expressed ideas relating to the notion of good, and the second letter, delta, they used in words relating to the notion of evil,
as for example, theos,
that is God, and daimonion, that is demon. The notion and taste of the consonants of both these letters passed to all the beings of the contemporary civilization, but both these different letters having entirely different essences, they for some reason or other indicated by means of one and the same sign, namely the sign TH. For instance, the beings of the contemporary community called Russia, however hard they try, cannot pronounce these said two letters at all. Yet, nevertheless, they very definitely sense their difference. And whenever they have to use these letters in words with definite notions, then although the letters they pronounce do not correspond at all, yet they correctly sense their difference and do not use one letter for the other. On the other hand, the beings of the contemporary community called England still pronounce each separate letter almost as the ancient Greeks pronounced it, but while doing so, sense no difference in them, and without the least embarrassment, employ, for words of entirely opposite meaning, one and the same conventional sign in the form of their famous TH. For instance, when beings of the contemporary England utter their favorite and frequently used expression, "Thank you,"
you can clearly hear the ancient letter theta.
and when they pronounce the word they like no less and also frequently use, the word there, you hear quite distinctly and definitely the ancient letter delta. But all the same, for both these letters, they use without any what is called remorse the same universally paradoxical TH. However, I think I've talked enough about terrestrial philology. We had better continue to clear up first the causes why it has been customary among your contemporary favorites to have such theaters everywhere, and afterwards what their contemporary actors do in these theaters and how they manifest themselves there. As regards the question why it became the custom among them to assemble, often in considerable groups, in these theaters of theirs, it was, in my opinion, because these contemporary theaters of theirs and all that goes on in them happen to correspond very well to the abnormally formed common presences of most of these contemporary three-brained beings, in whom there had been already finally lost the need, proper to three-brained beings, to actualize their own initiative in everything, and who exist only according to chance shocks from outside, or to the promptings of the consequences crystallized in them of one or other of the properties of the organ Kundabuffer. From the very beginning of the arising of those theaters of theirs, they assembled, and now assemble in them for the purpose of watching and studying the reproductions of their contemporary actors. No, they assemble only